Hi guys, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of Total War Arena. So we have just hit open beta. It's now finally out. It's the 22nd of February and well, I'm very excited and I've been really enjoying this afternoon, sort of getting stuck in with some of the new units, and it's nice to have a lot more people in the game. So I thought since, you know, the new faction has been added, since Carthage has been added, it would be wrong not to take a bit of a quick look at them initially. So I've been having a play with all the different things, the Cavalry, the Infantry, the Hoplites. But for this video, we'll be taking a quick look at the Tier 4 Libyan Recruits. So these are sort of the equivalent of the Roman Tier 4 Hastati. So they are a Tier 4 Sword Infantry. They get this sort of like curved, I don't know what it's called, falcata? Interesting name, and a large shield and a good amount of body armour. So they sort of play out a little bit like the Roman heavy infantry. However, they sacrifice a bit of their body armour, some of their body armour and survivability, for increased speed, because they get a base movement speed of 3.6, but they get 2 bits of equipment. Their upgraded body armour gives movement speed as well as the greaves, so they actually get quite fast once they get moving. On top of which, if you don't know, I'm using them with Hannibal, whose one of his abilities is Forced March, and that's a toggle ability, and that gives plus 19% movement speed, and that is as long that he'll do that until I either turn it off until he's engaged. It's sort of like momentum is for Arminius. So that's actually really makes these guys actually really quick, one of the quickest units on the battlefield when they've got that Forced March activated. So they're actually really flexible. That's one of the biggest problems with the Romans, is their sort of slow speed, particularly when you start to get to the higher tiers. So that Forced March ability is actually really nice. So if we take a look at their stats, sort of aggression-wise, they have reasonable melee attack and damage, and a sort of semi-decent defense on all the other things. Not quite as good as the Romans, but pretty good. I am running these with a consumable. I'm still making a good profit on all of these, so I see no reason to not really use the consumables. I've been using Anatheth Blessing 4, which gives melee attack and a melee defense increase, which I think is sort of well worthwhile. Just to note, they also get formed combat, which is exactly the same as the Romans, and they get interestingly, they get a shield screen, which is sort of like the Testudo. It gives missile block chance and charge deflect, so where they all sort of lock shields together. But obviously you can't move and you are silenced while you're doing that, so you can't use any of your other abilities. But good if you need to hold a position and you're being shot at by archers. So without further ado, let's hop into a replay and see how we got on in our battle. So you join me on the Battle of the Rubicon. So it's not exactly, this is not going to be a perfect match on exactly how to play, but I chose this replay because it sort of demonstrates quite a few different factors of these units, and particularly about the war elephants as well, which is sort of the most controversial addition to the game, also the most exciting depending on how you look at it. So yeah, so they look a lot like the Roman infantry as well, with their sort of body armour, big shields and swords. And I start just by moving up to the front, sort of see what we can see. We've got some pikemen, or hoplites even, over to our left. These are the Libyan Hoplites, so these are also the Carthaginian Tier 5 Hoplite Infantry, which are kind of interesting. Play out in a very similar way to the Greek Hoplites, really. And so they get stuck, have a bit of a melee with these infantry to the start, while I'm pushing across the river. But I notice these guys start to push quite hard into these Hoplites who don't really get any sort of form. So as I'm sort of pushing around, I realise this, and I think, well, it's probably a good idea to get back to try and help them. So initially I forget to use Forced March, but then I remember, and by using Forced March, that gets my movement speed well up. It's actually a lot quicker than it's showing here, it's just not updated it. Or it's because I'm in a river, might be the actual reason. Yeah, here we go, 4.26, so we get quite quick. And by using this movement speed, and these guys aren't using the Forced March, so I'm a lot quicker, and I'm able to push straight into them. A bit of an error, I sort of formed into a blob, which I shouldn't have done, but I was sort of trying to get back quickly. So I try and spread myself out a little bit into more of a line, and these guys sort of don't really know what to do, and they sort of push along the line a bit, and that enables me to get quite a bit of early damage in, which is kind of important. So I also then activate my Defiance, deactivated, but basically that gives me an increase to melee attack, plus 25%, which is the chance of me landing a hit on the enemy infantry, and my melee defense, which is obviously my ability to block. So both of them are worthwhile using, and it's got quite a 60-second recharge, so it's quite quick to recharge as well. So we start to rack up quite a bit of damage against these guys for what they're doing against us, and we just try and keep the pressure on them. We're trying to just whittle them down. We are equivalent units, but I think we've sort of managed to force them into a bit of a better blob, and then we get some barbarian equivalent tier infantry turn up as well, which slams into the sides of them, which really helps out. They managed to wrap round, which causes these guys to get a rear flank modifier, and their morale just sort of continues to drop off from there, I guess minus 46. So they start to rout and try and push our way through our units. That enables us to get a good amount of damage against them. Then these get the rear flank modifier as well, and their morale completely shatters as well, so then we're just left with this one unit. And as you can see, we start to rack up some damage against this routing unit, which is exactly what we want. And then it's just this surviving unit, which is only, you know, before too long is invariably going to get the routing mechanic as well, but he's running out. Now, at this point, I'll just pause here because, as I'm sure you've seen, something that I didn't see while I was in the middle of this fight. I was faced this way, really engrossed, really pleased. Oh yeah, we're killing them, not paying attention. And yes, behind us we have a tier 6 full health African elephant with 48 or 45,500 health remaining. I think between all my units combined I barely have that much health. So I finish off these Libyan infantry, still not paying attention, and then we get walked straight into by an elephant. And a massive stomp he does and knocks all my units down. You can see how effective that is. Almost my entire army just got completely knocked on the floor by that one stomp. Now at this point I hadn't fought any elephants before, so this is my first engagement with an elephant. So even though I knew, you know, I'm in a tier 4 against a tier 6, and I've sort of read around and heard around that these elephants are going to be pretty menacing, I kind of wanted to see what happens, which is kind of why I want to show you this replay. So after that I thought, oh well, the actual individual damage we're taking isn't that high considering the tier difference and how much damage we're starting to rack up against this elephant. So I thought, oh, we're not doing perhaps too badly. And that might seem to be the case, but then you have to remember that this one elephant, considering he has 3 of these guys, starts with 48,000 health. So I have to be damaging him 3 times. You know, my units only start with 20,000, so I really have to be damaging him 2 or 3 times as much as he is doing to me for it to be effective. And I realise that really isn't the case, because every time he does a stomp he's just slaughtering so many of my people. And you can see my unit health are really starting to drop away. Look at that, the amount of damage he does in that one swipe, like 4,000. And even though we've done a little bit of damage against him, it really isn't very effective. And you can see how much health we've lost on all our units. We're just down to like less than a third on everyone. And I realised sort of the error I'd made. So at this point I decided, right, let's get the hell out of here. So we get out, I activate Force March, try and get all my units up off the floor and get out of there. Thankfully the elephant then goes for the people, so I managed to pull away a bit and regroup. I run away a little bit too far, but I was just trying to get clear of the elephant. So then I see that this elephant's sort of getting caught up in all these barbarians. You can see he's been fighting basically in continual combat for a long time now, when we've done what? Maybe 10,000 damage since he first got involved. And this is one unit, and he's got another 2 of these guys. So it goes to show how dangerous these elephants are. You really need to watch out for them. So since that elephant's sort of moving away a little bit with these barbarian infantry, I thought it would be a good opportunity to get around the flank on these enemy hoplites. So I just push around and start to push into these guys. They turn a little bit to face me, so they get a little bit of damage on me, but we also get into their sides, and we're with the hoplites in the back. It actually turned into a bit of an extended fight. These guys would have been better off coming out of their pipe phalanx to surround these guys, so we get the morale modifier. But it doesn't really matter, before too long they actually rat, and we only took about 100 damage from each. So it's not really too much of a pull, and there goes their morale, look, and they're routed. So I lost a lot of my units there to that elephant and really did very little damage back to it, so it really wasn't worth my while. Really these guys need to be taken out by javelins or by pikes or by archers. Even spearmen and pike aren't that effective against them, because even though they do a lot of damage, they don't stop the elephant. The elephant can actually just walk through the pikemen, so that makes it kind of quite effective still. So I saw this going on. I thought there's quite a few units back attacking the enemy base, but I noticed we've got a little bit of capping going on, so I start to move back. This is where this force march comes in quite useful, because we're just charging along this plane now. 4.26 on all my units. Nice good amount of movement speed. And obviously remember this is without fully upgrading the equipment. And we can just fly across the battlefield. And it's not like Sirene's ability where you just do quick rapid advance and you get 5 seconds, 10 seconds of moving quickly. This is forever really, until I deactivate it or until you get engaged in combat. So it allows me to move really quickly, keep up with these light hoplites, which is obviously what we want to be able to do. So I start to move around towards the base. You get a little bit of an advanced warning from this mounted warband who goes in and has a bit of a look. just on his own. I don't know why he didn't charge, but goes in and swings a sword at one or two of them before dying. So I'm moving in with this Hoplite. Obviously I'm aware that this Hoplite, if he goes into phalanx, could cause friendly fire damage to me. So I initially move in with him, but then I start to move off to the side, so he's got a nice clear run. Particularly if these units are going to stand here, I don't want to get in his way and end up damaging myself or causing him to, force friendly fire on me. But then, kind of unexpectedly, all these units completely pull back, which I kind of didn't expect them to do. I expected them, considering there's only one unit of hoplites on my mostly dead units. I thought they were going to face them, but they didn't. So I then pull back. I'm sort of umming and ahhing here, but then I decide, well, I might as well go around, force around this side, at least block them off from escaping. But as I decide to do this, the hoplites form up. These guys suddenly find courage because they think, oh, well, we've got 3 full-strength units, and they start to position themselves to get flanks on this hoplite, which in itself is not a bad move, and actually is going to pay off quite well for them. But they've kind of forgotten to bear in mind that I'm also coming back around the corner. It's just a lot of my units are now reduced health, so they're going to struggle to deal with what they've got. So they get stuck into these hoplites, as you would expect. The hoplites then get side flanked, but then I move in and try and rear flank these enemy Libyan recruits. I get stuck in with these guys and immediately act my determination. You can see there, it shows the ability, the 25% melee attack and 10 melee defense increase. So I'm moving around because I want to tackle one unit onto each of these enemies. These hoplites, which are obviously losing morale, are trying to pull back a little bit out of the fight to try and sort of keep morale. They end up facing the wrong way, unfortunately, which really causes them to rout. But then we sort of got them caught a little bit in the middle. Even with the hoplites routing, these Libyans are sort of bouncing back and forth between trying to keep these hoplites routed and trying to fend me off. It does mean, because they keep turning their backs to me, we start to accrue quite a bit of damage, considering all our units are on like 7%, 12% and 14%. We're actually doing an effective job of fighting these enemy units, considering how outnumbered we are. Now I'm keeping an eye on Defiance, so when Defiance runs down I'm making sure to reactivate it, because that boost to melee attack and melee defense is obviously quite useful. You can see now how having them sandwiched, we've got 10,000 damage on this one, 6 and 5 compared to the amount of damage we're taking, so we're actually doing quite well against them. It's just a little unfortunate we're just so outnumbered because of those casualties we took from the elephants. It really means that we are losing the fight, even with the hoplites on side. We just can't quite do enough. And you see our units start to struggle now. We're just running less and less, and then 4%, 2%, 2%. But they are actually routing, they are actually holding on into the fight and carrying on, which is kind of cool. If we just pop into fast forward briefly of this fight, you'll see that things are getting worse and worse. We're just down to a handful of men. Unfortunately, we can't do enough to win it, even though we still actually get a lot of damage in. And I was kind of pleased with that. It kind of shows to demonstrate that even though these units are fast and have that mobility, they are very strong if you can get them to the right position, particularly in a flanking manoeuvre like this. Here's the last guy. And then Hannibal ended up actually fighting on his own. He still manages to rack up a fair bit more little damage on his own, fighting against these remaining Libyan recruits. Unfortunately, the friendly hoplites then get rear flanked, and that's the end of their morale. But old Hannibal fights on to the end. It's a bit of a knockback, but he still gets the odd stab in. A good stab there. Oh, he kills someone. And another one. And he got another stab in before he finally gets knocked down. And that ends up finishing off that game there. The rest of the game goes on for absolutely ages, with basically people chasing each other around. But these elephants are the new dominant force on the battlefield. You've really got to watch out for them. But if you're like me, a person who prefers the sword infantry, then I highly recommend you check out the Carthaginian sword infantry. They really are quite good units, and the mobility they get over the Romans is kind of a real advantage. But don't go head to head with anyone, a Germanicus commander using Vengeance, because you will still lose. Obviously, when we get to tier 5 next, we've got the Add Porters upgrade, which could be interesting. That's something we've got to look forward to. So, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like. It really helps the channel out. Subscribe for lots more Total War Arena content. Thanks, guys, and I shall see you all on the next video.